Hi, I'm Candice Malcolm, and this is the Candice Malcolm Show. And this is a very special episode today because I am being joined by my friend, Sue-Ann Levy, longtime colleague over at the Toronto Sun. And she's joining me today because we have a very special announcement. Sue-Ann Levy left the Toronto Sun after 31 years of writing for that newspaper, and she's joining True North as a contributor, and we are absolutely elated and so excited to have you as joining our team, as part of our team, Sue-Ann. You're such a good reporter. You've got such a sense and such an instinct for your investigative reports and following the story, following scoops. So first and foremost, just welcome to the team and welcome to our organization. We're so thrilled to have you.
Thank you very much, Candice.
So first, before we get into sort of, learning a little bit more about you and what you're going to be working on True North, you have the nickname Scoop Levy. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you got that nickname.
Well, I had to get an email address many, many moons ago. This is about 25 years old, this Scoop Levy address. And I guess I always prided myself on being ahead of the pack, or not a part of the media pack, and setting the agenda. So the name has kind of stuck with me all these years because love me or hate me, I do find I have a nose for sniffing out the stories that nobody wants to tell.
Well, you made a really good point there. You talked about the pack of the media, and it's just such a pack mentality. It's really incredible to see. I think part of the reason is because, well, especially the national news, is because there's so many CBC reporters, and they basically all have the same worldview. They're kind of given the same ideas of what stories to cover, and everyone just kind of follows. There's not a lot of divergence. There's not a lot of original thinking in these media packs. So how did you come to form your own path, and how did you resist kind of joining that pack over the years?
It was hard. And I actually write about it in my book from 2016, Underdog, which we shamelessly, we plugged our books together. And I remember at a federal convention years ago. And I write about the fact that I was actually mocked over the years by City Hall journalists because I didn't run with the pack, and they would sort of isolate me when I was actually located at City Hall. It was quite uncanny what happened. And then they'd secretly follow me, a week or two later, because the story wasn't really theirs until they got it. But yeah, it was hard. You had to be really, really tough. And I observed a lot of bad behavior. The difference in the last couple of years is that they would make fun of me or whisper or whatever, but now it's become quite brutal with the bullying on social media and the attempts to silence you on social media, to dig out dirt they think is dirt from 12, 14 years ago. It's really, I mean, if these people spent as much time actually chasing a story as they do trying to denigrate people who do real journalism, it would be interesting. The world would be quite different, I think.
Yeah, if only they could channel their energy for good instead of what they choose to do. And we obviously get that a lot at True North, Sue-Ann. And it's sort of funny. Sometimes, True North will break a story and then, all of a sudden it'll show up in the mainstream media a week later. And, while at the same time you see journalists speaking off on Twitter, they know a scoop when they see one, and a lot of times they do end up following us. I think you've had a bit of a contrarian view on COVID, and I know that's something that here at True North, we're really critical of the lockdowns, and we've seen a lot of abuse of power and a lot of the country going in really dark ways in some regards, just with regards to giving up our liberties and saying that we would rather have safety than freedom. Why don't you talk a little bit about some of your reporting on COVID?
Yeah, I did a lot, and particularly the closure of a border, which we're going on, 15 months, 16 months, where we can't cross over into the United States. And I did a lot of stories about having been down in Florida. I own a home down there. I did a lot of stories of people just really fully vaccinated, trying to come back to Canada and cross the border, and the hoops they had to jump through, myself included, after being fully vaccinated. And the ridiculous use of resources by the government, the federal government, and using Switch Health, and the absolute madness and chaos with respect to tests, quarantine tests, on day 1 and on day 8. I did a lot of that. The fines that people were presented at the airport, really by, I guess, most times border guards or cops who decided selectively who would get a fine. And the fines went from $37.50 if you refused to go to a COVID hotel to $5,000. It was outrageous. And I know a lot of people are fighting those fines. So that was one thing I really focused on. And, you know, finally they've lifted the hotel quarantine, which was absolutely a waste of time and ridiculous. But we still can't cross the border, which is another insane, absolutely insane part of this whole discussion. The other thing is that we have leaders who set goalposts, like Rob Ford, may he rest in peace, Doug Ford, his brother, our premier, who set goalposts, say you have a certain number have to be vaccinated with one vaccine and a certain number have to be fully vaccinated, and we'll go to what they call stage 3, where you can engage in indoor dining, gyms can open, that kind of thing. Well, we've reached those goalposts, but he's saying for 2 more weeks, July 23rd, the earliest, can we go into restaurants? We can actually sit inside restaurants. Now, Candice, I was down in Florida in April and I was dining outside. Most provinces in Canada not only have indoor dining at this point, but they've relieved their mask laws. Here in Toronto, our medical officer of health, who was really slow off the mark to actually clamp down and get measures put in place and didn't recognize community spread, is now telling us we have to wear masks till October 1st in Toronto if we want to go inside any location.
It's wild. And I read that, well, I read on True North actually that Ontario is the only jurisdiction in all of North America right now that still requires masks inside. And I think one thing that maybe some viewers across the country don't really realize that Toronto has had the strictest lockdowns, the most intense measures. It's also the densest, most urban place in the whole country. So, you know, while other Canadians might be able to, you know, go to a park or go enjoy, you know, some time outside, so many people in Toronto are stuck in these tiny little condos or townhouses where they don't really have backyards. It's been incredibly tough on people in Toronto. You would think that the mainstream media would be onto that story because so many of them live in Toronto, and yet that's not really the narrative that you see at all.
The narrative is these lockdowns are good for you, and the mainstream media perpetuates this narrative. And I was appalled to see that, you know, when I've tweeted or gone on social media to say enough with the masks, enough with the lockdowns. I don't understand why people are jogging outside and biking with masks on. I got such pushback from people who've been totally indoctrinated by our political, I use quotations, leaders. They've been totally indoctrinated, and they think that this is good for them, that they're protecting other people, even though doctors and medical experts have said that you can't spread anything outside. And besides, I'm vaccinated. So I'm not going to be jogging with a mask on, and I'm not going to be biking with a mask on. I'm sorry. And I look at people who are, and I think, my God, is this like a comfort blanket or something? You know, like when you were little and you had a little teddy and a blanket, they can't let it go. Or have our leaders instilled incredible fear in these people?
Well, it's so funny, Sue-Ann, because I think for years, people on the right, conservatives who are afraid, or at least, you know, ringing the alarm bell, showing some concern for policies surrounding immigration, mass migration, specifically immigration from war zones where people have the ISIS ideology and they might be coming to Canada. You know, we were spreading, we were sending a message that this, you know, should be a policy that should be thought through, and, you know, we should spend some time thinking about it before we just open our borders. And the sort of mainstream media and left-wing activists accuse people like you and I of fear-mongering and scaremongering and, you know, creating a moral panic around these issues. And it was so rich and so ironic for me to see how they've all reacted with COVID, because the things that they accused us of doing, which we weren't really doing, is exactly what they're doing when it comes to COVID. They're fear mongering. They're insisting that, this is the end of, end of civilization. This is a collapse. And if we don't follow all of their very strict edicts, we'll all die or something like that. It's so rich and so hypocritical. But you mentioned Rob Ford, and I know you've been critical of his brother Doug, but you've covered 4 mayors in Toronto over the years, and I wonder, maybe you can tell us what some of your favorite moments covering those mayors, and maybe who is your favorite mayor out of all the Toronto mayors that you covered?
Well, I had the most empathy for Rob Ford because I thought that the pack mentality, the bullies, just descended on him and, criticized him for his addictions. I think he actually did a tremendous amount of good for the first year and a half until he got derailed. These are the same people who purport to support safe injection sites. In other words, enabling drug addicts to continue to take their drugs, but with safe and clean needles. And we've got 9 of those in Toronto. It's ridiculous, but it wasn't okay. This man was horrible for being human and having addictions. And, so the mob mentality just made me sick. So that was one time when I was completely bullied for supporting him and understanding him. I think my favorite mayor, though, was Mel Lastman. He was a character. He was a showman. He really did love Toronto, and he had a massive job to do to bring together 6 cities and a metro regional jurisdiction into one. And there was a lot of chaos. I was at City Hall from 1998 when amalgamation was first announced. And I think he did a tremendous job, all things considered. Unfortunately, when you brought the 7 jurisdictions together, the city of Toronto mentality, Toronto proper, has dominated for since 1998. The free spending, the leftist mentality, the safe injection sites, enabling the vulnerable, not giving them a hand up, giving them a handout, not giving them a hand up. So, I think Mel's instincts were terrific. He, he tried to promote Toronto as best he could. He was very aware of tourism and the need to bring people to Toronto. He had a little trouble during SARS. And when he one of my favorite moments is when he got on CNN and said, "Who's the who?" I remember all those things, or the boiling pot when he talked about, in Mombasa when they were bidding for the Olympics and he had to go to Mombasa and he didn't want to go because people were boiled in pots. He was indicative of his era. Let's put it that way. And he also accused me of not loving Toronto one time when I asked him a hard question. Quite the opposite. David Miller probably was my best time because he was a leftist. He didn't pretend to be anything else. Union backed. And I got, as they say in the business, brown envelopes. You know what brown envelopes are. I got a lot of stories slipped to me because I became the official opposition. I had a great number of years with him. And the bullying we talked about really occurred during those years because I didn't run with the pack. And Rob Ford we talked about, and John Tory has been a huge disappointment to me. On my son departure video, I said no comment, but I can be a little more open with you. I think he promoted himself as a conservative. This term, he swung totally to the left. He's terrible at making decisions. He puts his finger to the wind, but he's been totally dominated by the leftist mentality downtown. And I think the city has not been better for his mayoralty. I think the city has really gone downhill, and I grieve that every day when I see the city around me.
Well, especially under COVID, it's just been tremendous. This sort of is becoming a ghost town because no one wants to be there, and it just makes no sense, some of the stuff they're doing.
Right. I was just downtown yesterday on Queen Street, and the shops are sort of open. There are lineups to get into some of them. Some are closed. Every third one has a for lease sign, every third storefront. And there are people lying on the sidewalk. My first thing when I parked my car, and I do mostly bike downtown, I have to tell you, my new e-bike, but I took the car because it was a rainy day. And I got out of the car and there was a drugged out young man. It was so sad, talking to a hydro box. And this is what we see more often than not in downtown Toronto now. And it's very sad. It's really sad. And I can't believe that tourists won't notice this. And it's been escalating over the last couple of years.
That's so sad. Well, let's talk a little bit about True North and what our audience can expect from you, or what kind of stories you're going to be working on for us.
Well, I'm starting off the mark with, just what we've talked about, how COVID has affected business in Toronto and how our politicians and our mayor is totally tone deaf when it comes to the fact that their every third storefront has a for lease sign, and has spent more time cheerleading to tell people to get vaccines than really being concerned about the Toronto around him. So that's one of them. The other thing is statue. So we talk about taking down statues. All we've heard lately, Candice, is Sir John A. Macdonald is terrible. Ryerson, Egerton Ryerson, excuse me, Egerton Ryerson, the terrible thing they did, the activists did here in Toronto, where they took off his head and totally defaced the statue. Really an act of vandalism. No one was charged. Trotted the head off to Lake Ontario, dipped it in Lake Ontario. I mean, it was just such a puerile act. So they're taking statues down, all the activists, but the left have decided to put a statue up of one of their own. A councillor in downtown Toronto, Pam McConnell, who was a councillor for many, many years, 30 years plus, is having a statue erected in her honor. She passed away in 2017. And they're going to be spending money on erecting a statue of her during this time when we really need the money for so many other things. By the way, no statues proposed for Rob Ford.
Well, that's no surprise given who
Yes.
controls the purse strings over at City Hall. Well, Sue-Ann, you're such a huge asset, and you're so important to the world of journalism. I know you're retiring, and you're retired now, so we promise not to work you too hard. But I think that you still have so much to offer, and True North is just so pleased to have you as part of our team.
Oh, thank you very much, and I think I will really enjoy, doing the real journalism, as they say. Not that I haven't practiced it over the years, but, I'm really looking forward to it.
Great. Well, I think we're all looking forward to what you do for us for True North. Thank you so much for joining the Candice Malcolm Show. I am Candice Malcolm.